The complete works of Swami Vivekananda, Volume 2, Cosmology. There are two worlds, the microcosm and the macrocosm, the internal and the external. Microcosm is internal, macrocosm is external. We get truth from both of this by means of experience. The truth gathered from internal experience is called psychology and metaphysics and religion. From external experiences, it is called physical science. Now, a perfect truth should be in harmony with experience in both these worlds. The microcosm must bear testimony to the macrocosm and the macrocosm to the microcosm. The physical truth must have its counterpart in the internal world, and the internal world must have its verification outside. Yet, as a rule, we find that many of these truths are in conflict. At one period of the world's history, the internal becomes superior and then begin to fight the external. At the same present time, the external, the physicists, have become superior and they have put down many claims of psychologists and metaphysicians. So far as my knowledge goes, I find that the real essential part of psychology are in perfect accord with the essential part of modern physical knowledge. It is not given to one individual to get to be greater in every respect. It is not given to one race or nation to be equally strong in the research in all the field of knowledge. The modern European nations are very strong in this research of the external physical knowledge, but they are not so strong in their studies of the inner nature of man. On the other hand, the Orientals have not been be very strong in their researches of the external physical world, but very strong in their researches of the internal. Therefore, we find that Oriental physics and the other sciences are not in accordance with Occidental science or in Occidental psychology, in harmony with Oriental psychology. The Oriental physicists have been rooted by the Occidental scientists. At the same time, each claims to rest on truth. And as we stated before, real truth is any field of knowledge will be contradict itself. The truths internal are in harmony with the truth external. We all know the theories of the cosmos according to the modern astronomer and physicist. And at the same time, we all know how fully they undermine the theology of Europe. How the scientific discoveries that are made act as a bomb thrown at its stronghold, and we know how theologians have in all time attempted to put down these researches. I want here to go over the psychological idea of the Orients about cosmology and all that pertains to it, and you will find how wonderfully they are in accordance with the latest discovery of the modern science, and where there is disharmony, you will find that it is the modern science which lacks and not they. We all use the word nature. The old Sankhya philosophers called it by two different names, Prakriti, which is very much the same as the word nature, and the more scientific name, Avyakta, Avyakta, undifferentiated, from which everything proceeds, such as atom, molecules, and forces, mind, thoughts, intellect. It is startling to find that philosophers and metaphysicians of India stated ages ago that mind is material. What are our present materialistic trying to do? But to show that mind is as much a produce of nature as the body, and so is the thought, and we shall find by and by intelligence also. All issue from that nature which are called as avyakta, the undifferentiated. The Sankhya defines it as the equilibrium of the three forces, one of which is called as sattva, another is rajasa, and third one is tamas. Tamas, the lowest force, is that of attraction, a little higher than rajas. Then a little higher is rajas, that of repulsion, and the highest of the balance of these two is sattva. So that when these two forces, attraction and repulsion, are held in a perfect control by this sattva, there is no creation. no movement in the earth or in the world. As soon as this equilibrium is lost, the balance is disturbed, and one of these forces gets stronger than the other. Motion sets in, and a creation begins. This state of things goes on cyclically, periodically. That is to say, there is a period of disturbance of the balance when the forces begin to combine and recombine and things project outwards. At the same time, everything has a tendency to go back to the primal state of equilibrium, and the time comes when that total annihilation of all manifestation is reached. Again, after a period, the whole thing is disturbed, projected outward, and again it slowly goes down like waves. All motion, everything in this universe can be likened to waves undergoing successive rise and fall. Some of these philosophers hold that the whole universe quiets down for a period. Others hold that this quieting down applies only to systems. That is to say, that while our system here, this solar system, will quiet down and go back into the undifferentiated state, millions of other systems will go the other way and will project outward. I should rather favor the second opinion that this quieting down is not simultaneous over the world of the universe and that is different part, different things go on. But the principle remains the same that all we see, that is, nature himself or herself, is progressing in successive rises and fall. The one stage falling down, going back to balance, and perfect equilibrium is called as pralay. The one stage falling down and going back to balance, the perfect equilibrium is called as pralay, the end of the cycle. The projection and the pralay of the universe have been compared by theistical writers in India to the outbreath and in-breath of God. God is has it where God has it where breathes out the universe and it comes into him again. When it quiets down, what becomes of the universe? It exists only in a finer form, in a form of a cause, as it were called in the Sankhya philosophy. It does not get rid of causation, time, and space. They are there. Only it comes to very fine and minute forms. Supposing that the whole universe begins to shrink till every one of us become just a little molecule, we should not feel the change at all because everything relating to us would be shrinking at the same time. The whole thing goes down and again projects out, and cause begins brings out the effect, and so it goes on. What we call matter in modern times was called by the ancient psychologists bhutas, the external metals or external elements. There is one element which, according to them, is eternal. Every other element is produced out of this one. It is called Akash. It is somewhat similar to the idea of ether of the modern, though not exactly similar. Along with this element, that is the primal energy called pran. Pran and Akash combine and recombine and form the elements out of them. Then at the end of the kalpa, everything subsides and goes back to Akash and Pran. There is in the Rig Veda, the oldest human writing in existence, a beautiful passage describing creation and is most poetic. When there was neither ought nor not, when there was neither ought nor not, when darkness was rolling over the darkness, when darkness was rolling over darkness, what existed? And the answer is given. It then existed without vibration. It then existed without vibration. This pran existed then, but there was no motion in it. Ani anidvatam means existed without vibration. Vibration had stopped. Then, when the kalp began, after an immense interval, the anivad, anidvatam, no, unvibrating atom, commenced to vibrate, and blow after blow it is given by pran to Akash. The atom become condensed, and as they are condensed, different elements are formed. We generally find these things very curiously translated. People do not go to the philosophers or the commentators for their translation and have not the brains to understand them themselves. A silly man reads three letters of Sanskrit and translates a whole book. They translate the element as air, fire, and so on. If they would go to the commentator, they would find they do not mean air or anything of that sort. The Akash acted upon by the repeated blows of pran produces Vayu or vibration. This Vayu vibrates and the vibration grows more and more rapidly, resulting in friction, giving rise to heat, that is Tejas. Then this heat ends in liquefaction, that is Aap. Then the liquid becomes solid. We had ether and motion. Then came heat, and then it became liquefied, and then it condensed into gross matter, and it goes back in exactly the reverse way. The solid will be liquefied and will then be converted into mass of heat, and that will slowly become back into motion, and that motion will stop, and this gulp will be destroyed. Then again it will come back and again dissolve into ether. Pran cannot walk alone without the help of Akash. All that we know is in the form of motion, vibration, or thought is the modification of Pran. Everything that we know in the shape matter, either has form or has resistance, is the modification of Akash. The Pran cannot live alone or act without the medium. When it is pure Pran, it has the Akash itself to live in. And when it changes into the forces of nature, say gravitation or centrifugal force, it must have matter. You have never seen force without matter or matter without force. What we call force and matter are simply the gross manifestation of this same thing, which when superfine is called as pran and akash. Pran you can call in English life. Pran you can call in English life, the vital force, but you must not restrict it to the life of man. At the same time, you must not identify it with spirit, that is Atma. So this goes on. Creation cannot have either of a beginning or an end. It is eternal, ongoing. We shall state another position of this old psychologist, which is that all gross things are the result of the fine ones. We shall state another position of this old psychologist, which is that all gross things are the result of fine ones. Everything that is gross is composed of a fine things, which they call the tanmatras, the fine particles. I smell a flower. To smell, something must come in contact with my nose. The flower is there, but I do not see it move towards me. That which comes from the flowers or and in contact with the nose is called as tanmatra, fine molecules of that flower. So with heat, light and everything, this tanmatra can again be divided into atoms. Different philosophers have different theories, and we know these are only theories. It is sufficient for our purpose to know that everything gross is composed of things that are very, very fine. We think we first get the gross elements which we feel externally and then come to the fine element with which the nose, eyes, and ears come in contact. Ether waves touch my ear and I cannot see them. Yet I know they must come in contact with my eyes before I can see light. Here are the eyes, but the eyes do not see. Take away the brain center, the eyes will still be there, as also the picture of the outside world, complete on the retina, and the eyes will not see. So the eyes are only a secondary instrument, not the organ of vision. The organ of vision is the nerve center in the brain. Likewise, the nose is the instrument and there is organ behind it. The senses are simply external instrument, and it may be said that these different organs, that is indriyas, are they are called in Sanskrit, are the real seat of perception. It is necessary for mind to be joined to an organ to perceive. It is common experience that we do not hear the clock strike when we happen to be buried in some other work. Why? The ear was there, sound was carried through the brain, yet it was not heard because the mind did not attach itself to the brain, to the organ of hearing. There is different organs from for each different instrument. For in for if one serves for all, we should find that when the mind joins itself to it, all the senses would be equally active. But it is not so. As we have seen from the instant of the clock, if there was only one organ for all the instruments, the mind would see and hear at the same time, would see and hear and smell at the same time, and it would be impossible for it not to do all these at one and the same time. Therefore, it is necessary that there should be a separate organ for each sense. This has been born out of modern philosophy and modern psycho philosophy. Yeah, modern philosophy. It is certainly possible for us to hear and see at the same time, but that is because the mind attaches itself partially to the two centers. What are the organs made of? We see that the instruments, the eyes, nose, ears are made of gross material. The organs are also made of matters. Just as the body is composed of gross matter and manufactures the plant into different gross forms, so the organs are composed of fine elements like Akash, Vayu, Tej, etc. and manufacture pran into the finer forces of perception. The organs, the pran function, the mind and the buddhi combined are called finer bodies. Organ, pran function, mind and the buddhi combined are called as finer body of man, the linga or sukshma sharir. Linga sharir has a real form because everything matter must have a form. The mind is called as manas, the chitta in vritti or vibrating, the unsettled state. If you throw a stone in a lake, first there will be vibration and then resistance. For a moment, the water will vibrate and then it will react on the stone. So when any impression comes on the chitta, the first vibrates a little. That is called as manas. The mind carries the impression further in and presents it to the determinative faculty, buddhi, which reacts. Behind buddhi is ahankar, that is egoism, the self consciousness which say I am. Behind ahankar is mahat, intellect, the highest form of nature's existence. Each one is the effect of the succeeding one. In the case of a lake, every blow that comes to it is from the external world, while in case of the mind, the blow may come either from external or from the internal world. Behind the intellect is the self of man, that is Purush, the Atman, the pure, the perfect, who alone is a seer and for whom is all this change. Man looks on all these changes. He himself is never impure, but through that or through what the Vedantists call adhyayan, adhy, adhyasa, by reflection, by implication, he seems to be impure. It is like the appearance of the crystal when the red or blue flower is brought before it. The color is reflected on it, but the crystal itself is pure. We shall take it for granted that there are many selves and each self is pure and perfect. Various kinds of gross and fine matter superimpose themselves on the self, making it multicolor. Why does nature do all that or do all this? Nature is undergoing all these changes for the development of the soul. All this creation is for the benefit of the soul and so that it may be free. This immense book, which we call the universe, is stretched out before man so that he may read, and he discovers eventually that he is an omnipresent and omniscient and omnipotent being. I must here tell you that some of our best psychologists do not believe in God in the sense in which you believe in Him. The father of our psychology, Kapila, denies the existence of God. The father of our psychology, Kapil Rishi, denies the existence of God. This idea is that a personal God is quite unnecessary. Nature itself is sufficient to work out of the whole creation. What is called the design theory, he knocked on the head and said that more childish theories was never advanced. But he admits a particular kind of God. He says we are all struggling to get free. And when we become free, we can, as it were, melt away into nature, only to come out at the beginning of the next cycle and be its ruler. We come out omniscient and omnipotent being. In that sense, we can be called gods. You and I, and the humblest beings, can be gods in different cycles. He says such a God will be temporary but an eternal God. Eternally omnipotent and ruler of the universe cannot be. If there was such a God, there would be this difficulty. He must be either a bound spirit or a free one. A God who is perfectly free would not create. There is no necessity for it. If we were bound, we would not create, because he could not. He would be powerless. In neither case, in neither case, there cannot be any omniscient or omnipotent eternal ruler. In our scriptures, wherever the word God is mentioned, he says it means those human beings who have become free. Kapila Rishi does not believe in the unity of all soul. His analysis, so far as it goes, is simply marvelous. He is the father of Indian thinkers. Buddhism and other systems are the outcome of his thoughts. According to his psychology, all souls can regain their freedom and their natural rights, which are omnipotent and omniscient. But the question arises, where is this bondage? Kapila Rishi says it is without beginning, but if it is without beginning, it must be without end, and we shall never be free. We say that though bondage is without beginning, it is not of that constant uniform character as the soul is. In other words, the nature, the cause of bondage is without beginning and end, but not in the same sense as the soul. Because nature has no individuality, it is like a river which gets a fresh body of water every moment. The sum total of these bodies of water is the river, but the river is not constant quality. Everything in nature is constantly changing, but the soul never changes. So, as nature is always changing, it is possible for a soul to come out of its bondage. The whole of the universe is built upon the same plan as a part of it. So, just as I have a mind, there is a cosmic mind. As in the individual, so in the universe. There is a universal gross mind, behind that, a universal fine body, behind that, a universal mind, behind that, universal egoism or consciousness, and behind that, universal intellect. And all this is in nature, the manifestation of nature, not outside of it. We have the gross bodies from our parents, as also our consciousness. Strict heredity says my body is a part of my parents' body. The material of my consciousness and egoism is a part of my parents. We can add to the little portion inherited from our parents by drawing upon the universal consciousness. There is an infinite storehouse of intelligence out of which we draw what we require. There is an infinite storehouse of mental force in the universe out of which we are drawing eternally. But the seed must come from the parent. Our theory is heredity coupled with reincarnation. By the law of heredity, the reincarnation soul receives from parent the material out of which of manufacture a man. Some of the European philosophers have asserted that this world exists because I exist, and if I do not exist, the world will not exist. Sometimes it is stated thus: if all people in the world were to die, there were no more human beings and no animals with powers of perception and intelligence. All these manifestations would disappear. But these European philosophers do not know the psychology of it. Although they know the principle, modern psychology and modern philosophy has got only a glimpse of it. This becomes easy to understand when looked at from the Sankhya point of view. According to the Sankhya, it is impossible for anything to be which has not has it material some portion of his mind. According to the Sankhya, it is impossible for anything to be which has not has its material some portion of my mind. I do not know this table as it is. An impression from it comes to the eyes, then to the indriyas, and then to the mind. And then mind reacts, and that reaction is what I call the table. It is just the same as thrown a stone in the lake. The lake throws a wave towards the stone, and this wave is what we know. What is the external nobody knows. When I try to know it, it has to become that material which I furnish. I, with my own mind, have furnished the material for my eyes. There is something which is outside, which is only the occasion, the suggestion, and upon that suggestion I project my mind, and it takes the form, and that I see. How do we all see the same things? Because we all have similar parts of the cosmic mind. Those who have like those who have like minds will see like things, and those who have not will not see alike. Those who have like minds will see like things, and those who have not will not see alike.